In this video, we're going to try recreating Billie Joe Armstrong's iconic guitar tone from Green Day using nothing but free plugins on the internet. Let's do this. Alright, so Billie Joe Armstrong's guitar tone has been the same for a very long time, and it is notably two Marshall Super Leads running at the same time, going into some 412 cabinets, and it's not a lot to it. Actually, a lot of the tone is in Billie Joe's hands.
Rockavallo had a 100-watt Plexi Super Lead amplifier known as the Marshall. And so he brought that in, and then we just plugged it in and turned it up, and it sounded really good. Basically, I've been using this sound my entire career.
Now, normally he uses either a Gibson Les Paul Jr. using a P90, or he's got his Fernandez Strat with a humbucker. I'm going to be trying to recreate this tone using a Gibson Dirty Figures humbucker in my Les Paul, because I think it sounds halfway decent. Now, all we have to do is reproduce two amps and then run them together at the same time.
We run two heads into two cabinets. You know, this one's set up a little cleaner, sort of a vintage tone, and this would be more of like an 80s metal kind of sound. And blended together, you can get a lot of punch and a lot of impact.
The first of his Marshall Super Leads is kind of the more rock and roll sounding one. We're going to achieve this using the Blue Cat free amp plugin suite. Links to all the plugins will be down below. Right here, we've got our first amp. And as you can see, I've based these settings off of literally how his guitar amp is set up.
This is it, you know, all the knobs pretty much straight up, and the master and gain at like 10 o'clock. You turn it up any louder or any more gain, it doesn't really sound that great. And Billie's tone really isn't about tons of gain. It's not. It's actually cleaner than you would think it is.
Now, Billie Joe doesn't use a ton of gain in his amp, but we've had to kind of compensate for it a little bit. So the first amp sounds like this. Now, Billie Joe typically uses a less dirty amp tone than one might assume. We've had to push the drive a little bit to make it sound a little bit better because, you know, it's a plugin. But this is kind of based on his tone settings, and then I tweaked it a little bit until I got it sounding good. You can, of course, copy this, no problem. And then that's going to be running into the Ignite Audio NAD IR impulse response plugin. Again, you can get this for free, and it comes built in with a few impulse response cabinets. Billie Joe is known for using old vintage 30s.
These two are Billie's.
Do you know which speakers they are?
30s, pretty much in everything.
And I just have it set up with a 57 on center and a 421 slightly off axis, and I think it sounds pretty good. Now, this on its own sounds a little weak, a little mid-rangey, you know, kind of maybe not the best. The magic sauce is when we're going to mix it in with the second amp. The second amp is known for being more of like an 80s metal kind of amp, so I got something going that sounds like this. As you can hear, this is a bit more distorted, a little more kind of like low-endy, and definitely sounds more like kind of a typical like metal-y kind of tone. I've definitely got a lot of the mids boosted and some highs just to make up for it. And again, more drive than typically he would use, but we're trying to make up for it in these plugins, whereas opposed to like cranking up a super lead, which those things just sound fantastic.
Mid-rangey, like good rock and roll 50s sound to it. So, but you can crank it and with lots of distortion.
Again, this is going into the Ignite Audio NAD IR. I'm using a slightly different setup this time. I've got this on the 441 in the center and then the 421 just slightly offset because I think it sounded good. On their own, they don't sound maybe the best. They sound fine, but not amazing. The real trick is when we put them together. That's when you start to hear the real magic. And then to make them even better, we can pan them hard left and hard right. So when the guitar's playing just on its own, it's a very large tone that sounds pretty rad and I think pretty close. I think that's a pretty close tone, but the real trick is going to be once we've double tracked everything and put in some drums and bass, does it have that Green Day sound? Let's give it a shot.